Well, good morning and thank you for joining us. Welcome to the Hydrogen and Fuel Cell Technologies webinar. This is the first in our winter webinar series for 2022, which is co-hosted by Drive Clean Indiana and Wisconsin Clean Cities. Next slide, please. I am Lori Cagle. I am the Communications Director for both Drive Clean Indiana and Wisconsin Clean Cities, and I'm going to be serving as your moderator today. Next slide, please. We are very pleased to have a panel of experts in the hydrogen and fuel cell technologies realm joining us today. From Gas Technology Institute, Ted Barnes. From Cummins, Rob Harvey. From the National Renewable Energy Lab, which you will hear us refer to as NREL, Sam Sprik. And the Fuel Cell and Hydrogen Energy Association, Frank Wolak. Next slide, please. I just would like to start by telling you a little bit about Drive Clean Indiana and Wisconsin Clean Cities. I know we do have a great number of attendees today, and some who may not have attended our events in the past, who may need just a quick little bit of information about who we are and what we do. We are two of the U.S. Department of Energy's more than 75 Clean Cities coalitions. All of the Clean Cities coalitions support the nation's energy and economic security by building partnerships to advance affordable domestic transportation fuels, energy efficient mobility systems, and other fuel saving technologies and practices. Next slide, please. I would also be remiss if I did not mention that Drive Clean Indiana was formerly South Shore Clean Cities. We recently underwent a rebranding as part of our move to a statewide Clean Cities coalition. So we are very proud about that. Both Drive Clean Indiana and Wisconsin Clean Cities are member-based, statewide nonprofit organizations, and they both work to support the advancement of alternative fuels, alternative fuel vehicles, and sustainable vehicle technologies like electric vehicles and their charging infrastructure, and hydrogen and fuel cell technologies. The efforts reduce the nation's dependence on imported oil, improve air quality, support local jobs, drive economic development, and promote improved quality of life. Next slide, please. I am going to ask our panelists to all please come on camera and join me and unmute yourselves. I will do a very quick intro and then allow each of them to tell you a little bit about what each of their organizations are doing within their capacities with hydrogen and fuel cell technologies. So with us are Ted Barnes, Director of Transportation Group for Gas Technology Institute. We have Rob Harvey, Director of Energy Infrastructure for Fuel Cell and Hydrogen Technologies for Cummins. Sam Sprik, Researcher Mechanical Engineering for National Renewable Energy Lab, and Frank Wolak with the Fuel Cell and Hydrogen Energy Association. Frank is the President and CEO. Welcome, gentlemen. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Well, I do also want to let our attendees know that we'll be taking questions if we have any, so please feel free to type them in the questions box, and we will try to get to as many as possible after the panelists are done with our discussion. So gentlemen, let's have you tell us a little bit about yourselves and your organization's roles in the hydrogen and fuel cell technologies spaces. Frank, let's start with you.
Sure. Thank you very much, and thanks all of you for having this opportunity to be discussing hydrogen and fuel cells in the context of clean cities. It's a long time in coming. The Fuel Cell and Hydrogen Energy Association is the leading industry association in the United States supporting fuel cell and hydrogen technologies. We have been in existence and advocating for the technologies and advancements of hydrogen for over 30 years. And we are based in Washington, D.C., and our mission is to facilitate the adoption of and expand the markets for clean, safe, and innovative uses of hydrogen and fuel cells. We do that by leading national advocacy to encourage all levels of governments to support hydrogen and fuel cells. We provide a unified voice in shaping regulations, codes, standards to enable commercial growth. And we educate key opinion and policy leaders at the federal and state level on the economic and environmental benefits of hydrogen and fuel cell technologies. We have an international membership comprised of nearly 80 companies, encompassing the full spectrum of the hydrogen economy, from automakers, heavy vehicle makers, aircraft and aerospace companies, hydrogen production companies, refueling station companies, and a variety of service providers and parties in the industrial gas and hydrogen space. So I really look forward to attending this and participating in the conference. And Maura, you had asked us to give a top level overview for a few minutes of what we see. Do you want to do that now or wait till after we have the four of us be introduced?
Let's get into that after we finish the introductions. So,
perfect, thank you.
Great. Thanks, Frank. Appreciate the work that you and your organization are doing. Sam, tell us a little bit about your work in hydrogen and fuel cell technologies with NREL, please.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. I'm Sam Sprik from the National Renewable Energy Laboratory in Golden, Colorado. NREL is a department lab with over 2,500 employees with a couple of satellite sites, including DC and Alaska. We are the primary laboratory out of the Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy Office at DOE. Within NREL, we have a hydrogen program that closely coordinates with the Hydrogen and Fuel Cells Technologies Office, or HFTO, at EERE. In addition to DOE projects, we also have multiple projects with our industry partners. At NREL, we are divided into centers and groups. And within those centers, I am the team lead in the Hydrogen Production and Power Systems Group within the Energy Conversion and Storage Systems Center. So a lot of acronyms, a lot of centers, groups, names. Our group research is mostly related to infrastructure for hydrogen fueling. Lately, that means heavy duty vehicle fueling, and in the integration of hydrogen with renewables and the grid. We have coordinated activities within the lab, such as the Advanced Research and Integrated Energy Systems, or ARES, where we integrate several storage technologies such as batteries and hydrogen, along with generation such as solar. We have labs and hardware where we do experiments running individual components, or we integrate multiple hardware components together with models or when simulating the grid. We have a controllable grid interface up to 20 megawatts. At our Flatirons campus near Boulder, Colorado, we have large wind turbines, solar array, batteries, and we're working on installing a large electrolyzer along with 600 kilograms of storage to make and store hydrogen. A 1 megawatt fuel cell will also be used to provide power back to the grid using that hydrogen. This hardware helps prove out ideas such as using hydrogen for long-term grid storage for when renewables are overproducing and returning power back to the grid when renewables are underproducing. At our Golden campus, we have a light-duty hydrogen dispenser and the infrastructure to support it, including storage, chiller, compressors. We also produce hydrogen from electrolyzer projects. We have both a Hyundai Nexo and a Toyota Mirai hydrogen fuel cell vehicles that we fill up the station. And we recently added more storage and a heavy-duty dispenser system to be able to do heavy-duty fueling tests with our heavy-duty vehicle simulator, which has 7 Type 4 tanks and 3 Type 3 tanks for fills over 60 kilograms each. We have lots of tools, H2 fills and CFD models together with hardware, and we research various fueling methods to be able to fill large storage systems quickly and without overheating the tanks towards DOE targets such as 8 kilograms per minute in the near term and 10 kilograms per minute in the longer term. We also work on safety sensor projects to detect hydrogen leaks at facilities and sensors to determine if there's hydrogen quality issues, as fuel cells require very pure hydrogen to prevent contamination and degradation. We have several projects collecting and analyzing data from real-world demonstrations and work closely with California agencies on the infrastructure where we have access to station data and provide public results. And we have worked with Ted Barnes here with GTI on several of those stations. Our National Fuel Cell Technology Evaluation Center, or NFC Tech, provides data biannually showing the status of the stations. Right now, that's mostly California retail stations. And we are also evaluating hydrogen buses and a UPS truck demonstration. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. You're doing very important work. We appreciate having you. Rob, can you share with us what Cummins is doing in this capacity, please?
Thanks, Lauren. I think everyone should know Cummins, century-old company, founded and based in, headquartered in Indiana, but with a global presence around the world, providing our customers with a powertrain of choice. Best known for diesel engines, diesel hybrids, fuel cell engines. But in 2019, we acquired Hydrogenics, which was a leading clean tech company, both on fuel cells and electrolysis. And now that's the heart of our Fuel Cell and Hydrogen Technologies Group in our new product business unit. The core areas of the product areas include battery electric components for battery electric vehicles, fuel cell power modules and compositions. It's a stack, and the integrated components that go with the stack is if you like, a fuel cell engine. And compositions are combinations of stacks for higher power output with control systems, the hydrogen management, the electrical management, all in a larger package for our customers, which are usually OEMs or integrators. Another area is hydrogen production side. We're one of the leading companies in the world in electrolysis, both small distributed electrolysis for fueling stations and large-scale electrolysis for major green hydrogen production in centralized plants for fueling fuel cell vehicles, for blending with natural gas, and for the production of green chemicals. A fourth emerging line is stationary fuel cells, solid oxide fuel cells for microgrids, and providing a clean zero emission solution for stationary applications. I'll give you some of the examples for where these fuel cells have been deployed. As I mentioned, our customers are OEMs, so we design and engineer products for bus companies such as New Flyer, for Alstom, for trains, for commuter trains. I'll be talking more about that in a moment. A wide variety of truck OEMs, and there's a lot of players in this space globally, in China and Europe and in the US as well, that are integrators that are working with an OEM platform, but are doing the fuel cell electric integration. And maybe a deeper dive, and we'll be talking more about buses and clean cities and the like, a lot of work there. But one of the most exciting projects that really shows the potential for fuel cell electric vehicles is our work with Alstom in the world's first zero emission commuter train, and that's the Karadia Island. And that train has been in public service since the fall of 2018 in Germany, and now I believe 6 other countries, operating in 6 other countries in Europe. And it's a zero emission solution that has all the characteristics of and performance of a diesel train that it's replacing, both for passengers and for the operator, which is important, and with far less costs, operating costs, than stringing overhead catenary wires to do a traditional electric train. We've been active in, as I mentioned, buses and many truck projects, garbage trucks, even planes, if you can imagine some of the research projects that we've been involved in with planes as well. The second area I mentioned is electrolysis, and that's using water, splitting water to produce hydrogen and oxygen. And I'll just highlight one project. We have the highest power density PEM electrolyzer stack in the world, and our first deployment of our Hylyzer 1000, which is 5 megawatts and a production capacity of 2,000 kilograms a day, is a 20 megawatt, 8,000 kilogram a day plant in Bécancour, Quebec, with Air Liquide, and that's an established hydrogen hub, and it's the largest PEM electrolyzer plant in the world, and that's been in operation nearly a year now. And those 2 touch points sort of give you some flavor and taste of what we've done with what we're doing with Cummins. There's a lot of interest around the world, and especially here in the US, for both green hydrogen and fuel cell projects, and Cummins is excited to be part of it.
Great, thanks, Rob. We appreciate all the work you're doing. Cummins is a good member and partner and friend to the Clean Cities Coalitions that are co-hosting today, and we appreciate the work that you're doing. Ted, speaking of good partners, GTI is a good partner to both of us as well. Tell us a little bit about the work that you're doing in hydrogen and fuel cell technologies with GTI.
Sure, thank you, Lori. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to talk with this great panel and on this topic. And so for those of you that aren't aware of GTI, we're relatively new, compared to Cummins, 100+ year, we're only 80 years old. So, we've been around since 1941. It started in the hydrogen space. There's GTI patents from 1950s, on fuel cells. So been working with hydrogen for a long time at GTI. We have about 400+ people across the country. Our headquarters is in Des Plaines, Illinois. But we're a nonprofit research lab. We do all kinds of R&D across the clean energy value chain. We really focus and try to specialize on the late stage research, so where we're getting demonstrations out into the field, where we're trying to take brand new technologies but commercialize them and work with companies like Cummins and work with NREL doing data collection on actual deployments and that's where we like to do all of our research. And we do that from early stage hydrogen generation from different clean technologies. We do it on transportation of hydrogen. We're doing a lot of work with hydrogen blending right now, blending hydrogen into the pipeline. Some of that works with NREL as well. Then we do work on cleanup and storage. And then finally, I'm the director of the transportation group, where we work on hydrogen for, not just onboard vehicles, but we do work with advanced vehicles, advanced storage on vehicles, but then also a lot of work with the fueling stations, trying to develop better fueling stations, either better fueling through the dispenser or better gas cooling, so that the gas can flow quicker and meet the densities that people are used to, on onboard vehicles. In our group, we do work not just in hydrogen. We do work with RNG and natural gas, renewable natural gas and natural gas. We do work with EVs. We do a lot of, we've been lucky to work with a lot of the Clean Cities coalitions across the country doing deployment programs for commercially available vehicles. And then, where GTI, because we have this long-standing history working across the value chain, we really do like to focus on large deployments that we can show all of the integration. And so we have a US DOE program right now through the H2 at Scale program. Ours is down in Texas at the University of Texas, where we have a site that we're building today that it will have clean generation from wind and solar using electrolysis. We'll also have clean hydrogen generation from steam methane reforming using renewable natural gas. And then at that same site, we'll store high pressure gas and then be able to use it in a variety of end uses. So we'll have Toyota Mirais on site that will be fueled. We'll have hydrogen drones. We're working with a hydrogen drone manufacturer, DMI, and helping get them into the US and moving that forward. And then we'll also have a stationary hydrogen fuel cell that will be creating clean power to put power to the data center on the UT campus there. So that's really where we like to be as involved as we can, where we can do the full value chain and start working toward, Rob mentioned the word hydrogen hub. It's a great discussion point. It's something that GTI is very interested in now, looking at that full, looking at the research all the way across from generation to end use and everything in between, and really trying to help move that forward.
Great. Well, thank you for the work that you're doing there, Ted, and thank you all for being with us again today and for sharing your expertise. Well, we're obviously extremely fortunate to have a group of experienced experts in this field with us today, but we know that hydrogen and fuel cell technologies can be a bit of a mystery for some folks. And we were talking about that before we went live today. Even fleet managers sometimes don't fully understand exactly what that technology is and what it does. Frank, maybe you could get us started with that kind of 10,000-foot explanation of hydrogen and fuel cell technologies and kind of how they work.
Sure. Well, I will in fact offer a 10,000-foot level because my other panelists are far more technically savvy and deep, so they can take it down to earth. But all of us, in the fuel cell and hydrogen space, the fuel cell technology is actually rather simplistic. When people think about the science of it, you really don't have to understand too much to know that you put a fuel into it, either a methane-based fuel or hydrogen, the methane being converted to hydrogen on board. And then the hydrogen is very elegantly transferred to electricity. So it's all done without combustion and without a lot of the complications of internal combustion engines or other forms of technologies. So when you think of a fuel cell itself, it's a means to convert hydrogen to electricity. And there are a lot of other factors that people often get hung up on trying to understand. But not unlike your automobile, we turn on a car, we put gasoline in it. We don't really think much about what goes on inside the engine. And a fuel cell should be looked at that way, especially in the transportation context. The manufacturers are the ones who are obligated to make the technology work seamlessly and effectively under a variety of conditions. But to the consumer and the station bus operator, the fuel cell itself should be viewed as another means of motive power on board a vehicle. As far as hydrogen is concerned, hydrogen is an enormously abundant element, and it's also an element that enables a number of other resources. There's several ways to generate hydrogen. Predominantly, green hydrogen is produced through electrolysis, and I'll let my other colleagues, especially Rob, touch on the merits of electrolysis. The value of hydrogen is that it is used in a fuel cell as a zero emissions technology and extremely clean, but also it can be generated and produced in a variety of locations. It doesn't have to rely on bulk production somewhere in a large operation overseas. And as hydrogen becomes more prevalent, you will see localized production of resources, you'll see bulk production of resources, and then you'll see the interchange of transportation and storage mediums, allowing this beautiful fuel to be brought to places where it can actually enhance what you're all trying to do with the Clean Cities program. So that's the 10,000-foot level. Fuel cells are simple, and hydrogen is available and will be more available, and it's a great product. So my colleagues can take it to another level.
Sure. Sam, did you want to chime in?
Thanks, Frank. I think you covered most of what I would say. One thing to just point out is usually we look at, quantities of hydrogen in kilograms, and we think of, fuels in gallons. So, 1 kilogram of hydrogen contains about the same energy as a gallon of gasoline. And, the fuel cells are about 2 times as efficient, maybe a little bit more than your gasoline engine or diesel engine. The other thing with hydrogen, storing it on board, cars right now, we're compressing it up to 10,000 PSI to be able to store enough in a, constrained volume.
Did anybody else want to chime in here?
It's just to take it, one step further for the end users, and what a lot of people ask about is, many people haven't seen a hydrogen station or a hydrogen vehicle, and so just to let everyone know, in California there are hydrogen fueling stations, particularly made for light duty vehicles. Typically, there are light duty vehicles made by many of the same light duty vehicle manufacturers that your cars are made, by, the Toyota, Hyundai, Honda, many others, Daimler, others. And so these vehicles are out on the road. They're used particularly in California, but there are some across the country. There are also ongoing demonstrations for larger vehicles as well, things like on-road trucks and garbage trucks. And I think Rob, can talk about some of their demos, and I can talk about some of ours. Well, everyone here has been very involved in many of them. But so, it is a fuel that's out there. It's vehicles that are out there. Transit buses should definitely be mentioned as well, school buses. So there's a lot of great applications that are on the road today, and we're all here working to make sure that those, get adopted more and are easier and keep moving forward.
Definitely. Gentlemen, I think one of the things that we always want to address when we're talking about sustainable transportation fuels and technologies is safety. Are there any safety concerns that are specific to hydrogen or fuel cell technologies?
I'll start out with that if that's okay. I think with any fuel, there are safety concerns, right? We're familiar with, what happens with gasoline and flames. But, if the solutions are engineered properly, we can alleviate these concerns. From talking to folks starting to look into hydrogen, that's one of the first questions I always ask. Is it safe? And then, where can I buy it, or where are the stations to fuel? I would say it is as safe as other fuels when all the safeguards are in place and the equipment is properly installed and maintained. And that's pretty key. Since hydrogen is the smallest element and needs to be pressurized to store enough due to its low volumetric density, it does have a propensity to leak through the tiniest of openings. So special care needs to be taken to prevent leaks and to have detection systems in place to mitigate for where they might happen and to prevent accumulation in case of leaks, so proper venting. The nice thing about hydrogen, it is a buoyant gas, which rises and dissipates quickly when released. So it kind of goes up in the air. I think the demonstrations and getting the technology out there where the public can interact with it will increase the comfort level, their safety level. As Ted mentioned, there's about 10,000 cars or so, hydrogen fuel cells cars running around in California, filling at over 40 stations every day. And I think that says a lot for how safe it is. We have cars at NREL. I drive and I feel safe in them. I wish, we could do a ride and drive for everybody so that you could get comfortable with the cars and say, yeah, they drive just like any other car. And they fuel very quickly too, if you have the fueling experience. So at NREL, we also, have the safety sensor research going on, and we develop things such as hydrogen wide area monitoring for detecting hydrogen in air at multiple inspection points, like around a station, let's say. So you catch it, you monitor it, you have controls built. So I think the engineering side of it, you can make it very safe, and it is safe.
Laurie, let me add to that. Take a step back from the detail. For the audience, hydrogen is in use around the country in ways that are going on every day and somewhat unseen. And just for a matter of information, there's about 11.5 million metric tons of hydrogen consumed in the United States. That's about $17.5 billion worth of fuels that are moving around behind the scenes today, largely unnoticed and adopted very safely by the producers of companies like Air Products, Air Liquide, Linde. You'll see their trucks on the road, but you really won't know that within it there is hydrogen in many of those vehicles. And what we haven't seen, though, is really the application of that hydrogen down to the consumer level and that consumer interface. But along that chain, years of development of safety standards and features have gone into the compression, storage, transportation, distribution of hydrogen, and all those items that NREL works on and GTI works on, quite frankly. And then you'll see as the adoption of hydrogen gets closer to the consumer and the urban areas, the people that are producing the technologies to consume and use the hydrogen are the same people we are comfortable with. Cummins' name has been around for 100 years. You'll see Toyota, you'll see Honda, and new players such as Nikola and others. But all those companies are steeped in the same safety standards in the automotive business. We just haven't seen as much visibility about the use of this wonderful fuel at the very one-on-one level. And but the safety behind all of this has been going on for years and is invisibly happening around us every day.
And just to add to that, there's a lot of great resources out there already to help with outreach, to help with education, and that, beyond Frank's organization that does so much of that, there's a California Fuel Cell Partnership in California. They've, established an organization that's done many training seminars for first responders, for, stakeholders across the value chain, maintenance and others. There's fabulous resources from places, like the US DOE Clean Cities, but also h2tools.org. There's just a lot of info out there for those that are either interested in a safety program or just interested, overall at the beginning of it. There's presentations, there's high-level presentations down to 400-page, DOE reports on the details of hydrogen safety and everything in there. So the information's out there. You can reach out to any of us if anyone has questions on this topic, for sure.
Great, thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate you saying that, it's, there's safety, safety concerns and issues, and things are being addressed, in the same way you would any other fuel. I think that's really kind of key to this as well. Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about the color wheel hydrogen. I think that's kind of another mystery area for folks. Ted, do you want to start off with that, or maybe Rob?
I'm happy to start off if and just talk through the idea of the color wheel, at least, I guess. A lot of conversations happen around hydrogen, and one of the first questions that comes is, where does the hydrogen come from? Is it clean hydrogen? And that's, I think, where this idea of a color wheel came from. And I've now seen presentations with up to 13 or 14 different colors. There's pink and orange and all these other colors. But at its root, the idea is to try to classify hydrogen. Green hydrogen, is zero emission or totally renewable hydrogen. Blue hydrogen, can be hydrogen from renewable natural, or from natural gas, from methane that, with carbon capture. There's brown hydrogen where you don't have carbon capture. Black hydrogen where it comes from coal, and different people use different colors. At the end of the day, my general take on that is there's value in people understanding, or people having a conversation about how clean a fuel is. There's value in trying to simplify and be able to just talk about a fuel. But I think it's very important to understand that fuel generation of all kinds, hydrogen, electricity, natural gas, all kind of biofuels, diesel, and all that, they're not just that simple. They're not even just 13 different ways of doing it. Each one has its own kind of carbon footprint or carbon intensity. And so, number one, it's easy to oversimplify that way. And then also, I think it's very important that if we're going to have a color wheel kind of conversation, we should do it with all of our fuels. It's not just hydrogen that has a variety of different, root sources, a variety of different feedstocks. Electricity is all different kinds of feedstocks as well. And so you could talk about the color wheel of electricity. You could talk about it for biofuels. You could talk about it just for gasoline and diesel. And so there's value in it, but you have to be careful, because you can oversimplify, and then you can also put a focus on the negative for hydrogen when there's negatives for all fuels, unfortunately. So it's really important to focus on our green sources, as our lower carbon sources where we can.
Yeah, I think Ted makes a very good point there. It's interesting. I think it's a good thing as an industry, in the hydrogen industry, we are focused on clean hydrogen. So green hydrogen from electrolysis from low carbon sources of generation, or blue hydrogen with carbon sequestration and storage. The focus is, cleaner is better, and most customers are looking for cleaner hydrogen solutions. But to Ted's point, with battery electric vehicles, people talk, well, there's zero emission vehicles. They don't talk about the source of generation. It's not even a topic that comes up very often. And I think the one point to point out, I think, as a society, the more hydrogen we're using of whatever color of the color wheel it is, the better off we are. Because even if you're taking conventional hydrogen, which is gray hydrogen, which was formed from steam methane or forming a natural gas, and you're displacing diesel, you're getting over half of the benefit of decarbonization using the I don't know if it's a brown, or we'll call it gray hydrogen, that you would from others. So I think as an industry and as our customers, we're looking to develop massive sources of clean hydrogen, be it green or blue or some other color. But the more hydrogen we use as a society, the better off we are. That's the bottom line.
Yeah. A sort of comment about this. I wish the color wheel would simply go away, because it is really a measurement of, and it's evolved in a sort of a positive way to distinguish production grades of hydrogen. As pointed out, the grayer hydrogens are fossil based, and they get cleaner if you separate the carbon. But then on the other extreme, you've got green hydrogen, which is essentially renewable. But the common denominator there is really a carbon intensity score. And to the end user and the person of buying the hydrogen at a pump, hydrogen is hydrogen. It's all going to look the same. But it's the production scoring of what the marketplace will want to pay for, how much hydrogen is and how we value greener hydrogen, But to the consumer, the scoring should look a lot more like the octane rating when you go to your gas pump. You get 87, 92, 93, 95, and the producers will effectively be producing hydrogen with different grades, and the marketplace is going to want to see ultimately the cheapest way to get the greenest hydrogen possible, and that's where the marketplace is going to go. But at the end use, the hydrogen will all look the same. It's going to be on all of us to assure that there's adequate supplies of hydrogen, and we're all migrating to the highest scoring or the lowest carbon intensity forms of hydrogen in the marketplace. But the color wheel is interesting because it differentiated the way people viewed their production and their carbon intensity of their production.
And I'll just throw out purple hydrogen. I think that's what it is when you make it from nuclear. So we have projects with nuclear power plants too, where they're producing hydrogen on site for their needs, and then any extra hydrogen could be used for other purposes. I like the notion of, you know, the intensity score versus the color wheel.
Well, I was going to ask a question using the term green technology, so now I'm afraid to. But so for
is it light green or dark green, Laurie?
Forgive me, but the so-called green hydrogen's been around in demonstrations for years, but there seems to be a lot more interest in that, and it's taking off a little bit more. Why would you say that is, and who are some of the players? Rob, you want to take this one to start?
Yeah, I mean, hydrogen, the clean technology, we'll call it clean. The clean technology has been around for a long time, you know, going back 20 years in projects that we've been involved in, but they've been, for the most part, demonstrations, small demonstrations. So with forklift trucks, garbage trucks, buses, I mentioned planes, and electrolysis has been around a long time too. Historically, electrolysis has been a make or buy decision for companies that need hydrogen in their manufacturing process. So if an Air Liquide or Air Products is not a short distance away, then you've got to make the hydrogen on site. And small scale electrolysis it's a mature market that's been around a long time. What's changed now is a couple of things, both on the technology side and on the regulatory side. On the technology for fuel cells is very well developed. It's proven. And we're seeing commercial projects in transit buses and fleets, primarily in California, but now in other states as well. And I mentioned the Grady Islands since 2018 in Germany and other European countries. The technology is ready. I mean, these are commercial products. You've got transit operators putting them into commercial service. They're looking for a one-to-one substitution with the diesel units that they're replacing, and it's ready now. The second thing that's driving, you know, why hydrogen now? Why is there so much excitement? Is from the regulatory side, and people are recognizing that as we work to a cleaner energy future and decarbonizing, hydrogen's not just a solution for reducing the carbon intensity of transportation. It's also a pathway to reduce the concentration for synthetic fuels, for natural gas, for heating, and also for the production of chemicals like methanol and ammonia. So from a policy framework, hydrogen is your proverbial Swiss knife. We can do a lot on basically all of the energy sectors and to meet policy goals. And I think that combination of the technology and the regulation is why the excitement around the world that we're seeing in hydrogen today.
Laurie, I'll add something to that piece that Rob mentioned. And if you go back to 2003 and that sort of era, when a lot of the clean cities organizations were being stood up, and hydrogen was kind of an interesting discussion, you had you know, earlier stages of fuel cell technologies in place that were still kind of in an early stage of development. But you also did not have the rapid growth of renewable electricity and wind or solar energy. And so if you fast forward 20 years, as Rob said, the state of the art of the devices themselves, both electrolysis, converting electricity to hydrogen, as well as the consuming technologies have become light years greater, more reliable, more robust, and cheaper. But along with that, I think society, along with the regulation pieces, society is seeing that we are very comfortable and we actually encourage and want more and more renewable resources, and they're tangible to us. You know, in 2003, there were a few solar panels around here or there. There weren't very many offshore, there were no offshore wind farms. Now we can view this combination of the technology readiness, this usable fuel resource called hydrogen, and the ability to produce that green hydrogen from resources that were kind of still on the drawing board in 2003. You put all that together, all of this bodes for the right combination of technologies for hydrogen, for renewable resources to come together, and entrepreneurs and governments saying, wait a minute, we can now generate this green hydrogen in ways that we didn't really think were practical 10 or certainly 20 years ago. It's a lot of things moving in the right direction on top of the regulation and the readiness of technologies.
Definitely. Well, I appreciate that insight. I know that I mean, obviously there's been a lot of projects for fuel cell electric fleets for buses and commuter trains, and we were talking about that a little bit. What are the advantages of fuel cell electric over battery electric for some of these heavy duty mobility systems?
Maybe I can start with that question. I think one thing off the top is that all fuel cell electric vehicles, whether it's a bus or a train or a truck or a forklift, is an electric vehicle. They all have electric drivetrains. You've got the advantage of the efficiency of a drivetrain versus a mechanical drivetrain, and you also have the potential for regenerative braking in urban duty cycles like city transit buses, which is important for the efficiency of the vehicles. The difference is the larger the vehicle, larger the payload, and the longer the distance, the bigger the advantage of a fuel cell electric vehicle over a battery electric vehicle, simply because of the size of the battery and the weight penalty of the battery in larger vehicles. And that's why we're seeing our focus at Cummins, but a lot of the work in the industry is on larger scale vehicles, the transit buses and trains and so forth. There's an opportunity in cars, as we've been mentioned in California, and I think especially for fleets. When you think about taxis and high use vehicles, the advantages of range come into play. There's a couple of, I'll just highlight three advantages. One is the one-to-one substitution. A fuel cell vehicle is going to have the same performance at the start of its 8-hour or 12-hour city route than it will at the 12th hour. That's not true of a battery electric vehicle. The one-to-one substitution is in terms of payload, in terms of the passenger experience, the routes, the elevation changes. A fuel cell will do whatever the diesel vehicle that it replaces. The other is in terms of big one is in terms of fueling, and because when you think about a lot of the demonstrations, you're talking, well, maybe 5 buses or 10 buses. And to set up charging infrastructure for 10 buses is not a big deal. Well, the electricity is already delivered to the door of the bus depot. But when you start to think about a full transition to a zero emission fleet, and you're talking about 100 buses or 150 buses, you still have the same number of hours in the day to charge 150 buses as you do for 10 buses. And the charging infrastructure, the megawatts of capacity that you need to charge 150 buses in 8 hours is enormous. And you're adding significant amounts of capital, and the utility might not even be able to serve the needs of those transit operators. But in the case of hydrogen, we can store hydrogen very easily to fill 150 buses or even more on one site reliably and provide the resilience that's needed. So again, from an operating standpoint, that's another advantage of hydrogen and fuel cell fleets.
Would anybody else like to chime in on that one?
Well, just to kind of chime in on the importance of use of hydrogen in the heavy duty sector, we talk a lot about transportation, and one of the main reasons that it's a focus for these kind of clean energy technologies is because transportation is such an issue for emissions, and particularly in the United States, but around the world. The transportation sector is the worst greenhouse gas producing sector. It recently, in the last 5-10 years, took over for electricity generation. A lot of that is because electricity generation's greenhouse gas emissions have decreased some from the increased use of natural gas over coal. But it's also just because the transportation sector, and particularly the heavy duty sector, has grown so much. Vehicle mile traveled are increasing. We're all having everything delivered to our front door instead of walking to the corner store, whatever it may be. And so greenhouse gases is a critical part of this, but so are criteria pollutants, and the environmental justice issues that all of our organizations are focused on. The heavy duty vehicles are the #1 NOx producers in an urban environment, and so much of this heavy duty vehicle use, not just heavy duty on-road vehicles, but trains and in ports and all the operations there, the criteria pollutants that are created there, that NOx, that create smog, lead to asthma and all the respiratory disease that happens in some of these priority communities. This is why there's so much focus here, and it's why I'll speak for GTI, but I'm sure it's for other organizations. It's why we focus so much on this space, is that you can make dramatic changes with a fuel and with a storage device that can make these kind of one-to-one replacements. And so it's just a critically important sector to clean up, because it's the worst. So
Sure.
something to focus on for sure.
Appreciate that, and appreciate the acknowledgement of the working in our EJ communities and making sure that we have justice and equity in the work that we do too. Shifting gears a little bit, Sam, what research capabilities does NREL have to address fueling of heavy duty vehicles in this space?
Thank you. I think I've mentioned some of it. So we're working on the equipment, next to our light duty station, to have a heavy duty dispenser to be able to, achieve the 10 kilograms per minute fill of a heavy duty truck. That's kind of the end target. We have, larger valves and larger piping and more ground storage than for the light duty station. We have a chiller that pre-cools the hydrogen down to minus 40 degrees C, so that it, when you dispense it into the tank and it heats up due to compression, this tank will stay well below the 85 degrees C. We also have that simulator, which is a bank of tanks to simulate filling of a heavy duty truck. We have instrumentation inside these tanks to measure temperature at different locations, to study the temperature profiles while fueling. We have models that can predict the bulk temperatures while fueling at the stations, and a computational fluid dynamics model to show local temperatures inside the tank. And so we're working on, testing out different fueling methods that will, keep these tanks safe, to save fueling temperature, to not cause damage to the tank, but still be able to fill, in relatively short time, 10 minutes or 15 minutes. So
Sure.
That's
all important work. We've talked a little bit about heavy duty. We've talked about transit. Are there off-road or other applications for hydrogen? Ted, you want to start off with this one?
Yeah, sure. It's a key place of focus for hydrogen research, a lot because of what Rob was mentioning. The heavy duty but off-road, non-road sector is so hard to bring in zero emission fuels. They're hard to electrify often, and so that's hydrogen has been a significant focus there. Just at GTI, we're working on a California Energy Commission project for a hydrogen locomotive. So that'll be a locomotive that'll operate in the ports in California. And once again, it's a very hard duty cycle for pure electric, and it's a very hard duty cycle for any zero emission. And so it's an exciting technology in an area that needs to be a focus. Where I mentioned at the beginning, we're working with company DMI and SoCal Gas on a hydrogen powered drone. So this is, drones are used more and more across industry, and hydrogen powered drones have approximately 4 times more flight time. And so that will allow, people use helicopters now to do different kinds of inspections or leak detections. You can do a lot of that with a drone. People drive for hundreds, thousands of miles in pickup trucks or different kind of vehicles. Well, you can eliminate some of those vehicle mile travel, using things like drones. And then, as Rob mentioned before, there's work going on in the marine space, particularly for passenger ferries. There's work going on in the even beyond drones, in aviation space. So there's a lot going on for sure, and it's a very key sector.
Lori, to add to what Ted had said, and the off-road, and certainly with clean cities are predominantly about a ground source. You impact of transportation. But urban areas are, especially the larger urban areas, they've got other factors about whether it's rail transportation, subways, diesel activity. We've got an aircraft is a huge new area, and the locomotive and the transport area, as well as the shipping and the larger aerospace markets, will be accelerating, driven mainly because when you look to decarbonize and replace fuels in those areas, there aren't very many solutions. You can't put batteries on aircraft. You can, use electric motive for trains, but if you're going to go from diesel to a powerful motive drivetrain, a heavy-duty fuel cell with hydrogen on a locomotive is one of the only solutions, along with heavy-duty vehicles, and marine also has heavy fuel. So getting those fuels out of our urban areas is going to, and decarbonize is going to require a lot of introduction of hydrogen, because that's the fuel that will be able to displace the diesel fuels. Batteries are just not that solution. So look for more on that transit, train, heavy aerospace, and marine applications in the context of cleaning up our cities.
Exciting.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, I think very quickly. Yeah, I think we've covered it, but the marine is certainly one sector. We're doing a project in California. I think it's the world's first zero emission fuel cell electric ferry. It's like buses on water. They come home at night. You've got a lot of the same characteristics. The mining sector is another big sector, and just generally, I don't want to get down, but on another tangent here. But when you think about, there are some you either substitute fuel cells for the conventional mode of transportation. The other is to decarbonize the fuel. And there's some areas like a 747 where you need, the solution is decarbonized green synthetic fuel. And the electrolytic hydrogen, green hydrogen, has got a role to play with that. So one example in synthetic fuels, the other for large scale shipping is green ammonia. And the investigations for container ships and things like that is to run on green ammonia as a zero carbon solution as well. So it sort of covers the whole spectrum of the transportation space.
Sure. Go ahead, Ted. I can see.
And just not to forget the easiest off-road sector, or easiest is never the right word, but the one that's been used the longest is forklifts. Those trucks that are in factories, that they've been operating on fuel cells for decades, and it can be a great place for fleets or for interested companies to get into hydrogen. It's a well-established industry as well.
Sure. So I'm looking at the clock. We have about 8 minutes left. I don't mind going over a little if our conversation stays lively, but I just kind of wanted to give you guys a little heads up on where we're at with time. What's the best way to store and distribute hydrogen to get it where customers are going to be needing it? What do you guys think about that, Rob?
There's two pathways. There's and really we're building, when you think about hydrogen infrastructure, we're not starting from scratch. We're building on the infrastructure that the industrial gas companies have established. And that is providing customers with delivered gaseous fuel in tube trailers or delivered liquid hydrogen. And those pathways have been, in North America, have been established for decades. So we're not doing something new. So it's going to be a combination of both. For some applications, centralized production of hydrogen, liquid distribution and liquid storage on site. And the other emerging one is distributed electrolysis, where you've got smaller electrolysis stations that are providing the needs for, say, one bus depot and maybe filling trailers to provide to another bus depot for the same transit operator. Those are the two primary pathways.
Yeah, and to add to that, beyond gaseous and liquid and distributed generation, which is going to be key, I think, for hydrogen, just making it on site where you need it. There's a lot of effort across the country in hydrogen blending. And so by that, I mean putting hydrogen into the natural gas infrastructure. There's decades and billions of dollars and a lot of history in natural gas infrastructure that's in the ground and existing. And so there's a big movement to determine how best to put hydrogen into the natural gas infrastructure and then utilize it that way. And in that way, depending on your end use, you can bring it all the way to the end use, just like natural gas is brought to an end use. You know, in an industrial application, with natural gas pipeline running to a large, commercial site, you have that infrastructure in place where it could be delivered directly to the application. Even fueling stations, you could bring it to a site through the natural gas pipeline, and then either use blended fuel, there's a lot of work going on. GTI has a lot of research going on for using blended hydrogen natural gas at different percentages for, in your home, residential hot water heaters and boilers and the like, up to glass melters and industrial furnaces and, all the other uses, or separating at site, and then you can use the pure hydrogen. So being able to use the existing infrastructure we have wherever we can, there's a lot of good there. And GTI has a wonderful opportunity with NREL and the US DOE right now looking at hydrogen blending. GTI is supporting the industrial side, where NREL's leading the federal research side of a hydrogen blending study, large effort funded through the US DOE, as well as through a lot of other corporate partners.
I might just add, just very quickly, and that groundwork that GTI has been doing for over a decade is crucial. The other thing is getting regulators, and I think California is advanced on that. We're actually we're doing a project with Enbridge Gas, which in north of Toronto, with the first blending up to 2% into Enbridge's natural gas grid, and working with the Ontario Energy Board. So this is an important pathway as well, for sure. And I'm glad to report the first project in North America is underway. The inauguration was a couple of weeks ago.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and the natural gas utilities in the U.S. as well have been very supportive and very interested, and provided a lot of the funding as well as a lot of the technical expertise.
Well, gentlemen, I'm going to cram together about 3 of the questions that we had discussed as we start to wrap it up. And I think these kind of get to the heart of what many of our attendees are probably wondering. What would you say are some of the key barriers to more widespread adoption? And what do you think needs to be done to help get us over some of those barriers? Do we anticipate seeing some funding with the infrastructure bill to help with that? What do you think? Any of you can weigh in on this one.
Well, I can take a quick shot at a perspective. I think barriers always come down to cost and availability of devices. And costs are coming down in a lot of ways, but society and consumers' desire to have greener, flexible, more usable forms of technologies will always drive more and more adoption. From a policy standpoint, you mentioned the infrastructure bill. I mean, the infrastructure work that was passed earlier this year, and hopefully some additional work that Congress still has to do with tax credits, is going to stimulate investment in a variety of ways. It's going to cause adoption levels at the local level with companies and users, and even clean cities organizations looking to aggregate new ways to utilize hydrogen. So I think you'll see that government activities start to cause people to want to adopt, and then that'll cause more technologies to be in play. More people get comfortable with it, the technology costs come down, and so the cycle can start becoming self-perpetuating.
Certainly, and I think if we look at some, a proven pathway is in the development of large-scale renewable generation projects, and a combination of investment tax credits and just a willingness of companies. It's a little different here than in Europe, right? When you look at Europe, you've got major policy and national hydrogen strategies. You've got billions of dollars of funding. They're doing a lot of great things, but it's all funding based and rule based. Here in the U.S., you've got companies that are like-minded. They want to produce green hydrogen. They want to get deployment of zero emission fleets, a combination of investment tax credits for the green hydrogen production, and things like we're seeing in California with supports for acquiring zero emission vehicles will get that ball rolling. And as Frank said, it's a virtuous cycle, and companies are keen to do it now. They just need a little support to make investments and get this ball rolling.
Yeah,
Anybody
you
else?
mentioned just the infrastructure bill focusing on hydrogen, $8 billion for hydrogen hubs across the US. So that would be fabulous to, once again, talking about the whole value chain. And I think all of us here have worked in hydrogen long enough. You know, there's a lot of great things going on, but there's a lot of hurdles. There's a lot of things that need to be solved, and it comes down to availability, economics. The status quo is not going to get it done. We have to, you know, do more research and make this better across the value chain. And so the infrastructure bill and the hydrogen hubs will be a fabulous step forward in the United States, as well as there's significant funding, billions for buses, for zero emission buses. A lot of those will be hydrogen buses, transit buses, school buses, and as well as other applications. So there's a lot of policy coming, a lot of funding coming.
Sure. Sam, did you want to weigh in on any of this?
No, I'll just mention, you know, DOE is working on a matchmaking tool to, you know, match the fleets to the production or any other companies in between there. And so I think it's key to have those, you know, the production of hydrogen and the dispensing of the fuel and the fleets using it. You know, everybody's got to kind of get together on a big happy date, I guess, to get it working. And I think that's great. And the tool will probably be useful from DOE side too.
That's fantastic. Last question, gentlemen. What should our attendees do if they're interested in learning more about hydrogen or fuel cells, or even if they think they might want to add it to their fleet operations? What would you recommend?
Well, I can give you a comment from a industry association. You know, first call the Clean Cities organization that's closest to you. But then, you know, you can certainly reach out to our organization via our website. We are a wonderful disseminator of information to filter questions and turn it into the right places around the country where the answer can be addressed. But the Clean Cities groups have got resources to be able to filter a lot of questions, and then, you know, an organization like ours at the national level is always readily available to assist.
Appreciate that plug, Frank. Your check's in the mail. Well, I will. I'm going to ask Kelly to put your contact information up as we wrap this up. I would recommend, if anybody is interested in learning more, not only to contact us, but also any of your speakers. All of their emails are here. I will also say we had asked for our attendees. We gave you the opportunity to add some questions in the question or chat box. I did not see any there, so we are nearly on time. I would like to thank all of you, Frank, Rob, Ted, and Sam, for joining us today and for sharing your expertise. This hour went very quickly, and I think that was because all of you were so engaged and so willing to share your knowledge. So thank you so much. Kelly, if you could scoot through to the next slide about our next, thank you, winter webinar series. We will be having we talked a lot about decarbonization today, and our next webinar is going to be February 22nd from 1 to 2 p.m. Central, and that's going to be on creating your decarbonization plan. We're going to have some utilities on, some municipalities on, both from Indiana and Wisconsin, talking about how they have both created and implemented those plans. So if you move to the next slide, Kelly, we'll have our websites there. The registration is open for those, and you can get those on either the Drive Clean Indiana or the Wisconsin Clean Cities websites. Thank you all again, the panelists, for sharing your expertise, and thank you to all of our attendees. We had a great turnout today. We hope to see you on the next one. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Thanks.